Mate, firstly, thank you for following my page. Secondly, you may see that I'm a men's coach, taking men on the longest journey of their life, out of their head and into their heart. But you may not realize my story and the fire that's lit within my belly to do what it is that I do and help men and in turn their families. So just keep clicking through here and I'm going to tell you my story, my history, and why it is that I do what I do. So firstly, I sound Aussie, but I'm actually Kiwi. I was born in New Zealand. My mum's Māori, which makes me Māori, and we moved to Australian shores when I was 4. I mention that because culture is a deep essence to who I am as a man and the work that I do on this planet. Now, there's some pivotal moments in my upbringing that I'm going to share with you vulnerably, and I do in a sense just to share that we all have a story, and then when we can work on ourselves and heal those parts of ourselves, that story can become our superpower. So at the age of 7, I was witnessing a lot of domestic violence, and that led to my mum and dad's separation. I'm the eldest of 5, and so at that very young age, I adopted the protector mentality pretty abruptly. And it was at this time that I actually started playing rugby league. A couple of years later, I turned 9 and I was molested. Why I share that is because I never spoke about that openly until I was about 32. And as an adult, what I've learned through that experience was I now am able to set really healthy boundaries. I know my non-negotiables, and something doesn't feel right, I trust my intuition, and I also have been able to speak up and say no when needed to. And over the next decade, as a young boy, I was super angry and had a massive chip in my shoulder, and I channeled unhealthily that aggression on the football field. I did, however, captain every rugby league team I ever played in, played for Queensland a couple of times, and also at the pinnacle of my career, played for New Zealand, captain New Zealand, my country where I'm from. I had a player manager, and I was also on contract the NRL club until it all went south. When I was 18 years old, I stood in front of the judge. Mum was in the room and he said to me, "Blase, you have been sentenced to 3 years jail, suspended immediately," which meant I didn't have to serve any time, but it was a massive rude awakening for me to do something to shift, because the role models that I surrounded myself with were super unhealthy and toxic. Now, that may have seemed like I hit rock bottom, but it was actually when I was about 22. A dear brother of mine attempted suicide. He slit both his wrists and he was 60 seconds away from bleeding out. He blamed me for moving away from where we lived, and it really hit me to my core, and I didn't have the emotional intelligence to be with that. So for the next 5 years, I went wayward. I spiraled out of control, addicted to anything I could get my hands on. Drugs, porn, prostitution, gambling, steroids. I was an alcoholic. But at that same time of me spiraling, at the age of 24, I became a foreman in construction. So I was leading men double my age, but no one knew the internal turmoil and how depressed I was on the inside, because I just hid it from the world. Fast forward until I was 27, and I actually had a spiritual awakening. That's a story for another time, because it's fucking dope and scary as. But then that started my lone wolf journey of bettering myself. I actually studied Buddhism for 3 years. No one knew about it. I was reading all of the books, go and listen to the podcast. I even went to an Eckhart Tolle retreat on my own, but no one found this side of me of looking inwards and trying to figure out who the fuck am I and why am I so depressed. Now, through the next couple of years, I was just doing that mental masturbation, just getting all of this knowledge, but never actually looking under the rug what was really going on, which led to 2 failed relationships, and the alcoholism was still very, very prominent. I've removed all of the other stuff, but alcohol was still my crux. Now, the epiphany moment. So 2016, met my wife, my now wife, and she'd been working on herself a lot, and I did very, very well of masking and hiding my jealousy, my insecurities, and she'd been working on herself a lot, like I mentioned. So she was able to hold a very stern mirror up to me, which I did what I knew to do as I ran for the hills. So all those old role models and childhood mates I used to grow up with, I went back, chasing the bag, got back on the gear, I relapsed, and it was a really bad experience. I ended up in hospital, I cracked my skull, I admitted myself out of hospital and then tried to drive home, high as fuck, 130 kilometers, and my wife, girlfriend at the time, and her mum had to come pick me up. Now, it was the very first time people brought me in close. They weren't my family, brought me in close without judgment, and my wife, she gave me the ultimatum: clean your shit up or I'm not going to be with you. So now, aged 32, I had the ultimatum: where do I go for help as a man? So I did the thing I knew, jumped on Google, and it said psychologist or psychiatrist. And I knew a psychiatrist would try and medicate me, so I went and saw a psychologist, which was amazing. It was the very first time that I started talking about my problems and my traumas, because I was really looking for a clear direction in my life. Now, it was very healing in that sense, but it only took me so far because, number one, I only told this man 70% of the truth because I didn't trust him because he never told me anything about himself. And the second thing was I asked him to give me stuff to sink my teeth into in between our sessions. I was sick of just talking. Now, it got to a point that it became out of his league, and then this is where I found men's work. So this is where I reached out to actually have a mentor, and I got a couple of the best in the business in the world. And so Preston Smiles and Jetty Azuma. Now, working with those men, we actually developed and created a movement called Conscious Man Brotherhood. And so over 4 years, I got to work deeply and closely with these men that were leading and living a life that I truly was inspiring to have. The three biggest things that I learned through those 4 years was that I became bigger than alcohol and went sober. I was able to learn how to healthily express my anger, so I stopped hurting the ones that I love. And number three was that I broke free of that people pleaser shackle that had had me crippled. I was able to find my purpose, my self-belief, my self-worth. I stopped hurting the people I love, and I stopped living that day-to-day, week-to-week, just groundhog days, just being mediocre in this existence. So we got to work and we built a gym to strengthen men's minds, their relationships and their leadership so they can cultivate a life of purpose, so they can live on. So this is where we went to work and built a gym for men to come and strengthen their mindset, their all relationships and their leadership within their manhood, so they could become men that were leading a life on purpose and with purpose. We call this the Mindfit Gym, which is a dojo for men to learn the tools, the strategies and the structure to grow in all areas of manhood and be held accountable to be that man, so they can show up for themselves, their family, and the impact that they're creating on this planet or in this planet within their business or the chosen career that they have. Putting it simply, my role on this planet is to get that fire in your chest burning so fucking brightly that you pave and light the way for yourself, for your family, and the people on this planet whom you wish to serve. Within just a short 12 months, we set men up for the rest of their life. They lay solid, deep foundations mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, so that when life's adversities throw themselves at them, they don't get knocked over or off axis anymore. They unlock the clarity in their direction over the next 10 years because these men have found their purpose, and they are bringing and leading their families on this journey with them because they understand this is their big why. And all of the time, they have then tapped into a brotherhood, an army of men for life. It can be done. The era of the lone wolf, it can cease to exist right now, and this can be the new era of manhood, where iron sharpens iron, men support men. This work lights my soul on fire. I get to meet the men's wives, and they say to me, like, what have you done to this man? I feel him, he's back. I look into his eyes and he's there again. I get to witness these men that are choosing themselves, that are present and connected with their children and being the role model that we young boys never had. And the best thing, these men being unapologetically themselves, where they don't give a fuck about what naysayers are doing or thinking because they understand who they are in here. So mate, if you'd like to join the brotherhood, start your inner journey, or just know a little bit more about the depth of the work that we do, jump on a call with me and let's have a chat, because this is what the world needs more than ever right now, is men like you and I coming together, supporting each other, tapping back into our hearts and leading life from this place.